On the evening of December 16, 1997, children all over Japan sat down to watch an episode of an anime that was starting to absolutely explode in popularity: Pokémon. In this particular episode, Ash, Brock, and Misty headed into cyberspace to try and stop a virus that was put there by Team Rocket. While doing so, Pikachu let loose a thunderbolt that struck some digital missiles, causing a spectacular explosion. However, this moment soon became an infamous event as red and blue lights flashed at nearly 12 hertz for roughly 6 seconds, leading to blindness, convulsions, seizures, and a loss of consciousness in hundreds of kids all over the country. Around 685 were transported to local hospitals, including 2 who wound up spending multiple weeks under medical supervision. However, even this horrific event couldn't kill the behemoth that is Pokémon, the highest-grossing media franchise of all time, worth over $100 billion. But how did this series about a kid and his electric mouse grow to such a colossal size? Well, it all started with a boy and his bugs. Born on August 28, 1965, Satoshi Tajiri, the creator of Pokémon, was a quiet child who spent his days living in rural Japan, running through fields and woods, constantly on the hunt for bugs to add to his ever-growing collection. In fact, he spent so much time on this hobby that the children in school gave him the nickname Dr. Bug, and he started considering a future career in entomology, or the study of insects. However, that's not the direction that his life would ultimately take. In school, Tajiri didn't exactly do great. In fact, during his teenage years, he would often skip school in order to go hang out at the local arcades, where his love of video games quickly grew. Despite his parents' distaste for this new form of entertainment, Tajiri began to dream of creating his own games, even going so far as to take apart some arcade systems in order to see how they worked. Because of how much school he missed out on, Tajiri didn't wind up going to university. Instead, he attended a 2-year technical degree program, which focused on computer science at the Tokyo National College of Technology. Around this time, Tajiri noticed a distinct lack of media surrounding video games. So, drawing upon his past experience writing newsletters about his discoveries while out hunting bugs for his classmates, he set out to create an independently published magazine about games entitled Game Freak, which featured tips, tricks, and previews of arcade titles. The zine quickly grew in popularity and caught the eye of Ken Sugimori, a young illustrator who reached out to Tajiri about working on the publication. Eventually, Tajiri found himself in a rather comfortable position financially because of Game Freak, and set his sights on something bigger than just some articles about achieving high scores. Tajiri began to look into making games himself. Soon thereafter, Tajiri, along with Sugimori, officially evolved Game Freak into a game development company with the release of Quinty, also known as Mindel Palace outside of Japan. This game's success allowed the young company to grow quickly, leading to even more work within the industry. One day, while talking about their individual progress through the game Dragon Quest II with Sugimori, Tajiri expressed frustration over failing to get a rare magical item to drop from enemies that could help him progress, while Sugimori noted that he had had 2 of them drop himself. Tajiri thought of how awesome it would be if Sugimori could somehow trade him that extra item, and thus, the initial spark that would become Pokémon was lit. Tajiri would later see a link cable, an accessory for the Nintendo Game Boy that was meant to allow for multiplayer gaming between 2 handhelds. When he saw this, his mind conjured up images of the bugs he used to collect as a kid, walking along the cable between the 2 devices. These 2 moments gave Tajiri the idea for a game where players would seek out and capture monsters, storing them in tiny capsules that they could trade with other players. Game Freak took this capsule monster concept and pitched it to Nintendo, who eventually greenlit the project. Tajiri wanted the game to feature a large, sprawling world for players to explore, hoping to instill in younger generations the same sense of exploration and adventure that he felt as a kid looking for bugs in the woods. A noble goal, especially considering the fact that at the time, rural areas in Japan were on the decline, with many of the rivers and forests that Tajiri once called home having been filled in and paved over in order to make way for urban developments in the suburbs of Tokyo. Tajiri felt it incredibly important for young Japanese kids to know what a more naturalistic life could be like, who may never get to experience such a thing. The development of the original red and green versions of Pokémon was troubled, to say the least. Taking over 6 years and nearly bankrupting Game Freak, Tajiri put everything he had into this game. He didn't even pay himself. during the game's development, instead putting the funds back into the project and living off his parents' income. Tajiri actually wasn't alone in his financial woes, however, as there were a few times throughout development where Game Freak wasn't able to pay some of their employees, leading to at least 5 of them leaving for understandable reasons. Now, normally with franchises like this, I'd be able to say something like, "This paid off big once the game was released." However, in Pokemon's case, this wasn't the way things played out. Once the first pair of games were released on February 27th, 1996, sales were modest at best. But over time, things began to pick up. One major factor that helped boost sales were the rumors and speculation generated by the discovery of a hidden Pokemon outside of the main 150. That Pokemon was Mew, a creature added by programmer Shigeki Morimoto in secret. Mew was added to the game roughly 2 weeks before the end of Red and Green's development period, during a time when making any major changes to a game is considered incredibly dangerous, as there is little time to fix any bugs such changes might introduce. Even Nintendo didn't know about Mew's creation. Mew was originally meant to be a Pokemon only available to Game Freak staff. However, Nintendo saw the popularity of the Pokemon among gamers and decided to capitalize on it, providing players with the means to obtain Mew themselves, further boosting sales of the game. Eventually, the series became one of Nintendo's top performers, leading to the creation of tie-in media, including a trading card game and an anime, along with the greenlighting of a sequel. Pokemon Gold and Silver went into development shortly after. Due to the series' moderate success upon its first release, the people working behind the scenes at Game Freak weren't sure if they would get the chance to work on any more Pokemon games after these sequels, so they put everything they wanted into these two as a sort of last stand for the franchise, resulting in games so large that it was a small miracle they were able to even fit on the original Game Boy's meager 8MB cartridge. For Gold and Silver, Game Freak developed 100 new Pokemon, bringing the total up to 252, if you count the mythical Pokemon Mew and Celebi. Additionally, they found a way to cram not just the new region of Johto into the game, but also the original game's region of Kanto, making these second-generation games by far the biggest in the entire series. And with the enhanced re-release, Pokemon Crystal version, they finally introduced the option of playing as a female protagonist. All in all, the second-generation games truly were a fantastic send-off from Game Freak. But as we all know, things didn't stop there as they expected. During the development of Gold and Silver, Nintendo was working on translating the original games for Western audiences, which would hit American shelves as Pokemon Red and Blue versions on September 28, 1998. Once the games were localized and brought over to the Western world, things really started to take off, as the world soon found itself in the grips of Pokémania. Pretty much everywhere you looked during the late 90s and early 2000s, you'd see Pokemon-related merchandise. Kids playing the games or trading cards, or even some Pokemon-esque knockoffs or parodies.
This game, these trading cards. Now, in the last report, the mother said these are collector's items. Now, it's interesting to me, the kids are playing with these. I'm wondering how many parents are buying these at $6, $8 a pop and shoving them in the drawer, or putting them in the plastic cases to send their kids to college in 20 years.
Well, they don't really think that they will be.
The series became so popular, in fact, that the maintaining of the franchise became almost as much of a job as developing it in the first place. So, in order to make things easier for the owners of the series, Nintendo and Game Freak worked to establish the Pokemon Company, a company with the sole focus of managing all aspects of the franchise outside of the actual development of the games. To head up this new organization, series owners put Tsunekazu Ishihara in charge of things as the president and CEO. Ishihara had experience working with the Pokemon series as the founder of Creatures Inc., a studio that helped with the development on all of the mainline Pokemon games. Over the course of the company's life, the Pokemon Company has been responsible for roughly $76 billion in merchandising sales, making up around 3/4 of the franchise's total gross. So it seems that the business of managing the franchise and its popularity is a full-time gig. A profitable one, but still. One major contributing factor to this profitability was the franchise's anime adaptation. Pokémon the anime premiered on April 1st, 1997 on TV Tokyo and told the story of Satoshi, also known as Ash in the American localization, as he made his way through the Pokémon world alongside his friend and constant companion, Pikachu. The series has so far run for over 27 seasons and counting. Even the incident involving Electric Soldier Porygon the episode that caused all of the medical issues mentioned at the beginning of this video, didn't put a halt to the popularity of the show, though it did slow it down significantly. After that episode aired, the stock price of Nintendo fell roughly 5%, prompting the company to pull the episode not just from broadcast, but from syndication as well. In addition, the anime went into a 4-month-long hiatus, while the animation studio worked to tone down elements that might cause future issues, like they saw in the episode, including editing the introduction of the show, which featured similar examples of strobing lights. At the same time, officials from broadcasting companies all across Japan, as well as medical professionals, came together to try and find ways to avoid an event like this from ever happening again. They eventually decided on a series of guidelines that included limiting the rate at which images could flash on screen, how long images could flash, and limiting the amount of screen real estate for stripes, swirls, and concentric circles. On top of all that, broadcasters began placing text on screen warning viewers about potential health risks and encouraging younger audiences to not sit quite so close to the TV. After the show returned, it was almost as if it had never gone on hiatus in the first place, as viewers once again flocked to the show, causing ratings to skyrocket beyond other popular children's programming. The anime also spawned a series of wildly successful films, the first of which, Pocket Monsters the Movie Mewtwo Strikes Back, was released theatrically in Japan on July 18, 1998. The film did incredibly well at the Japanese box office, bringing in a total domestic gross of 7.6 billion yen, or roughly $72 million. With a budget of around 350 million yen, the film was definitely a success. Critically, it also did quite well, with film critics all over Japan praising the film's exploration of deeper topics such as genetic modification, cloning, existentialism, and nihilism. The American adaptation did not fare as well, however, due to changes to the original film, including the removal of a large portion of the film dealing with the early life of Mewtwo and the dumbing down of some of the film's more mature subject matter. Critics tore the film apart. But this didn't seem to matter much to fans of the franchise, as it still managed to pull in $10.1 million on its opening day alone. While this number might not sound too overly impressive when compared to something like, for instance, Avengers Endgame's $157 million opening day, it's actually not too shabby when you take into consideration that the film opened in 1999 on a Wednesday. In fact, the movie wound up becoming the biggest animated film opening for any movie in the history of Warner Brothers, the movie's North American distributor. When all was said and done, the movie brought in a total worldwide gross of $172.7 million and held the title of the highest-grossing video game adaptation until the release of 2001's Lara Croft Tomb Raider. In fact, it still holds the record as the highest-grossing anime film in the United States. The film even saw a full CG remake in 2019 entitled Pokémon Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution, which was distributed in North America by Netflix. According to Netflix, the film wound up being the most watched anime film on their platform in 2020. The series has even seen a live-action outing. In May 2019, Detective Pikachu introduced the world to a fast-talking Pikachu voiced by Ryan Reynolds, as he teamed up with Justice Smith's Tim on an adventure to try and solve the mystery of who killed Tim's father, all the while trying to navigate the dangerous underbelly of Rhyme City. The film did incredibly well, pulling in roughly $433 million at the global box office, making it the second highest grossing video game adaptation of all time, behind the Warcraft film. And yes, it is an actual video game adaptation. Despite the fact that some audiences view the film as just a movie taking place within the Pokemon world, it is actually based off a spin-off title released for the Nintendo 3DS. Whether it be via films or the series itself, the Pokemon anime is largely credited with a substantial increase in the popularity of anime among Western audiences during the early 2000s. Alongside such shows as Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z, Pokemon is considered among the first series ever to reach mass appeal among mainstream audiences. And it hasn't just done that in America. Currently, the show is broadcast in over 169 countries all over the world. Now, back in the world of the games, Game Freak was hard at work producing the third set of games in the series, this time for the newly released Game Boy Advance. Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire released on the system on November 21st, 2002 in Japan, and March 19th, 2003 in North America, with an enhanced version, Pokemon Emerald, hitting shelves in 2004. These third-generation games saw the total number of Pokemon expand once again, introducing 135 new pocket monsters and taking players to the Hoenn region, a much more tropical and water-based locale than previous entries. Speaking of previous entries, these games were also the first time in the series' history where they were unable to communicate with previously released games. Due to the jump from the original Game Boy to the Advance, players had to leave their old Pokémon behind. To try to make up for this, and to make obtaining the older Pokémon easier, Game Freak developed remakes of the original games entitled Fire Red and Leaf Green. And moving forward, Game Freak always tried to figure out ways to allow for the transfer of Pokémon even across console generations. As it stands, a player can currently take a Pokémon from Ruby or Sapphire on the Game Boy Advance and transfer them all the way up to the current entries in the franchise, Sword and Shield, on the Switch. Though the process to do so is admittedly kinda convoluted and requires multiple games and at least 3 different systems. Of course, it can be argued that the fact that this is even possible is a testament to just how popular the franchise is to this day. Pokémon certainly isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Whether it be via the games, trading cards, toys, comics, odds are there will be something Pokémon related still coming out years and years and years from now, and the story of the goings-on behind the scenes will only continue to get crazier and crazier. Stay tuned, Pokefans. Did you know that scientists have even named things after Pokémon? There is a type of protein within humans called Pikachurin that deals with the synaptic signal transmission, and there is even a pair of dinosaurs named Bulbasaurus and Aerodactylus named after Bulbasaur and Aerodactyl respectively. Pretty cool, huh?